All right, it looks like we're starting to get folks trickling in. Hello, attendees. Welcome to our webinar today. So sorry for the technical issues, but we're glad that you're here. Hello to everyone that's coming in right now. As we get started, welcome to the Brown School's first info session for the spring semester. I'm joined here with a fantastic panel that you'll be able to see in just a few moments to get to introduce yourself to. But for those in the chat, if you want to go ahead and write your name, where you're calling in from or listening in on from, and then you want to maybe tell us if you've been admitted, what's your status? Are you still applying to the Brown School? Are you waiting for a decision? Just let us know kind of where you are in the process. I think a few folks have been admitted, and so we're really excited to see you here today and hopefully make this a good session for you all. Last thing to say too is that I just want to celebrate and lift up Happy Black History Month. And so as we start off Black History Month with this session, I hope that what you all will gain from this is being able to see the diversity of our staff, our faculty, and our students that just make the Brown School what it is today. So what a great way to kick off with some of our favorite people. All right, but we'll go ahead and get started with our little presentation. These are just some housekeeping notes to keep in mind for our info session today. So while we would love to hear from you in the chat, again, saying what your name is, where you're hearing or calling in from, where you're currently at, and maybe what your application status is, if you've been admitted, waiting for a decision, or still working on the application. Just know that we will have a Q&A feature. So if there are questions throughout this panel, we'll try and get to those if time allows. Please know that we are also recording today's session. So if you do want to go back and see anything that we might have missed, you are welcome to. We'll also have closed captions enabled and be active at any time. And also please know, because this is a Zoom webinar, we can't see or hear the audience and we can't call on raised hands. So please use that Q&A feature that we mentioned. If we're not able to get to your question, though, we'll definitely follow up with you via email, myself or one of my colleagues. And so with that being said, I will introduce me and my colleague Madison. Starting with myself, my name is Clarissa Jackson. I am an admissions and recruitment specialist. You may have heard from me or seen my face in your emails. So it's good to see you all here today. And I am also a graduate of the Brown School from 2016. I individualized with older adults and domestic SED, social and economic development. And so been in the field for a few years, and now I'm back here at the Brown School, ready to recruit some really great minds like you all. And I'm here joined today by Madison Neal, who I'll pass it over to.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison Neal. My pronouns are she, her. I also graduated from the Brown School. I graduated in 2020, concentrating in domestic, social, and economic development. And then I was also in the field in St. Louis. I did some policy work for a number of years before coming back to the Brown School. So I'm excited to be here and excited to help everyone as they are on their journey to the Brown School. And now we'll go ahead and introduce the rest of our panel. So we will have everyone introduce themselves, and we'll start with faculty first. So Caitlin, do you want to start?
Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin McMurtry. I'm an assistant professor here at the Brown School. I use she and they pronouns, and I'm really excited to get to talk to you today.
I'm assuming I should go next. My name is Sarah Chang. I am a research associate professor at the Brown School and the director of the Social System Design Lab. I'm also an MSW grad, a PhD grad. I love the Brown School. So that's what I'll be talking about with you all today. And it's good to meet you all. Maybe we go to Carrie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Ritchie, she, her. I am an MSP student, and I graduated with my Bachelor's of Arts in Social Work at Hood College in Maryland, and now I'm at the Brown School and getting ready to finish up the year since it's a year program. So just really excited for May. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a first-year MSW student. I did my undergrad at Carleton College in Minnesota, where I studied sociology and anthropology and did a little minor in creative writing. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan. I am a first-year advanced standing MSW student. I originally completed my Bachelor of Social Work over at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. My current concentration is health and with a specialization in management. So I'm excited to be with you all today.
Fantastic. Thank you, all panelists. And now we're going to ask some questions. And I thought it would be great if you don't get to see this PowerPoint, but get to see all of our lovely faces throughout this portion of the webinar. And we're really going to start off really easy, just getting to know everyone who's here. Could you all kind of share what brought you to the Brown School and how your experience here has compared to what you expected? And maybe too, for Caitlin, Sarah's as faculty, could you maybe talk a little bit more about what you focus in on and what that experience has been at the Brown School to do your work here? And maybe let's start with Carrie.
Hi guys. Okay, so the question was like what brought me here? What made me want to come here? I actually moved to St. Louis, so I was an East Coast girly. And I moved here in 2016. I knew about WashU even before I moved out here. I knew that it was one of the top two nationwide for social work. When I moved here, I wasn't really sure when I would want to go back to grad school. I think in the midst of COVID, graduating with my BSW, I was not really sure what was going on, what was going to happen. I wanted to wait a little while, and I had WashU Brown School just tucked away in the back of my mind because I knew that there would be a time for me to come. I also had a lot of friends who went to WashU at the Brown School, and they also just really loved it. They loved, how tight-knit the community was, how easy it was to find connections even outside of campus. And that's something that really brought me into that, is because I love making connections. I love how diverse it is. And that's not something that I really found at my undergrad. So I could go on, honestly, but there's just so many more things, but really it's just the connections, the community. I hold that so near and dear to my heart, and that is something that I will take along with me when I leave too. So, yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. How about Jonathan? Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. So originally, I'm from St. Louis, so I had a pretty good background knowledge of WashU and the program itself. A lot of my professors in undergrad were actually WashU Brown School alumni, and they would always kind of mention the great experience that they had here at the Brown School. So they encouraged me to apply, and given all the circumstances, I was given the opportunity to be here. But one thing that I really do appreciate about the Brown School is that I truly feel that everyone does have a place here. You do see students coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, interests, life experience, and somehow it all fits together in our classrooms, in our meeting spaces, coming together into this one given space. And like I mentioned, with similar interests, experiences, it really makes it easier to find your people and feel more welcome at the Brown School. And aside from like community, it's also been about the experiences here, whether it be practicum experiences, classroom experiences, or are also just connecting with advisors and faculty as well. All the help is there that you need. So that's kind of like what drew me in, and just learning about the Brown School program itself too. So.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. And we're going to talk about some of those things that you mentioned, like practicum and your experiences. But I'll pass it over to Sophie.
Yeah. So sort of unlike Jonathan, I'm originally from Kentucky and then did my undergrad in Minnesota. So I moved around a lot to get here, which meant it was sort of a risk coming here. Ultimately, it really came down to the amount of care and transparency that came from learning about the school when it is such a big decision about like investing my time and my money, hopping in my car and coming here. It was really important to know what I was getting into. And it felt like every step along the way, the Brown School was willing to communicate and share with me. And I feel like that definitely, as far as like meeting my expectations when I actually came here, is that like that is representative of the school and is also completely representative of the students. These students are sharers and organizers, and coming here, I think, yeah, like from far away, building that community was so important. everyone here does want to support one another, and not just like theoretical support, not just like emotional kind words when you need it. Like people here are organizing. There will be an itinerary for what that looks like. So that was really important for me coming here.
I feel that as an out-of-state student myself from Texas, that made all the difference for me too. Sarah, and then Caitlin, would you like to add to that as well?
Sure. So I came here in 2004. That was a long time ago. So we're 20 years ago. And I'm thinking of it's like taking me back a bit to be like, why did I come here anyway? I was at U of I, which was a very, very large school, 700 people per class, ginormous. Like you are just one person in a sea of folks. And I think what drew me to WashU was that the classes were tiny. I mean, and when I say tiny, 12 to 20 people per class. And the amount of attention you get from your professors is unparalleled. Coming from a public school to a private school, I just didn't realize that was a possibility. So for me, that, has really shaped who I am and the way that I think. And the other piece, I guess, that from a faculty perspective brought me here that connects even back to my MSW PhD days is there are some really amazing colleagues doing really cutting edge work here. And you will learn way more than the average what you think a social worker does, and new approaches to doing things. And I think that's why I keep coming back is it's not that they're teaching you what to think and how to do a job. They're really teaching you how to think and how to respond to the current climate that you're in. So that's why I loved being here, and I keep coming back and boomeranging. I tried to leave.
So I'm also from out of state. I grew up in Milwaukee. I just learned that Sophie and I went to the same college and we're also the same major. So I was a sociology, anthropology undergrad major. And then I went to work for government and at a research institute in Kansas for 4 years. Got a 2-year master's degree in public health, got a PhD in health policy where I mainly focused on political science. And then when I was on the job market looking at, jobs around the country, part of what I wanted to do is I had spent almost a decade on the East Coast where it really felt like a rat race. And it was very, very difficult to book time with professors or colleagues. Don't get me wrong, I thought I got a great education, but I was ready to do research that I cared about in an environment that didn't feel like a rat race and that also didn't feel like I was competing with everyone around me, but rather collaborating with them. And so getting to St. Louis, part of what I study is trust in government and how it affects whether or not people own firearms, how they use them, how they interact with healthcare and medical systems, and how they engage in democracy. And so I felt like, for a lot of universities, that's really controversial stuff. And it's not always well funded because it's very controversial. And I felt like the Brown School was a place where I could ask and answer the questions that really mattered to me as long as I was doing really good, rigorous scholarship. And I wouldn't necessarily be treated as a political liability. And one of the things that has surprised me pleasantly the most is how many talented students I get to work with. I'm actually kind of overloaded with really phenomenal students that I get to work with. And I'm trying to balance a few too many projects at the moment. Both at the Brown School, I also have a teaching appointment over at the medical school where I teach advocacy and health equity. And I've just been blown away by the quality of our students and how much I really enjoy working with them.
I'm going to pull an old 2008 reference, which is I'm going to drop the mic and say we have some of the best faculty here and just great people. And so listening to Sarah and Caitlin just talk, it's such a symbiotic relationship between faculty and students. It's really great to see. And so going back to the student perspective with Sophie, Jonathan, and Carrie, could you kind of talk to prospective students about what made you decide that now is the right time for an MSW and an MSP and kind of what led you to these specific disciplines versus something else? I know a lot of times folks are between sociology or psychology, maybe even public policy versus social policy. Could you maybe talk more about what led you to these roles, starting maybe with Sophie on this?
Yeah, totally. I love this question because when I went to undergrad, I was completely undecided and just knew sort of broadly I wanted to study people. And unfortunately, that is like every discipline has to do with people. Um, and so it was sort of the spectrum for me where psychology felt a little too lab rat, neurons, case study, poli-sci felt a little too broad scale people are numbers, and all love to these disciplines. These are all great disciplines, but sociology and anthropology really did fit that systematic thinking, looking and thinking critically about these trends that affect the more tactical, sensational lived experiences of people. And when I finally figured out that I wanted to do the clinical route, which took some push and pull for me, I ended up getting a work experience as a skills worker is what we called it, but I was working with youth on the autism spectrum, working one-on-one. I was like, this is what I want to do. What do I do next? Google, Google, Google. Social work really seemed to be the thing for me where I do want to work one-on-one with people, but less focusing maybe like sterile, clinical, more broad. How do we look at people in their full contexts? How do we look at people not just as symptoms, but really care about what are causing the problems and the challenges that these people are facing? And that was very much social work for me. So it was a really good transition between those two.
Yeah, I can go next. So, um, to answer like why social work, and honestly, kind of like Sophie, I've kind of been drawn to the intersection of people and systems surrounding them. And I love direct practice, don't get me wrong, but I'm also the person to kind of acknowledge when a system isn't working or when a policy is getting in the way of someone getting what they need. And within the practice of social work, I mean, that discipline lets me hold both the human side and the system side as well, without really having to choose one or the other. And then obtaining the MSW, I mean, with the bachelor in social work, already kind of getting experience in the field, um, getting the MSW was kind of the next step and really what actually opened doors for the field that I care about. And also for those of us in the call that are at advanced standing, being a good part of the timing. So having that BSW, having the foundation, you can jump into a shorter program length. And I felt like I was ready to take that step with everything that I'd learned through my experiences, through my undergraduate courses, and connect it into real practice with obtaining that MSW as well.
Um, for me, and so Sophie and Jonathan, thank you for you guys said it all. From an MSP perspective, I think overall, being an educated person, especially where I come from, being the first Black woman to attain a higher degree in my family, um, the social climate, the political climate that's happening right now, being here, getting this education, getting this degree, learning and challenging what is happening around me, what is inside my head that I want to challenge as well, the mindset, um, it's resilience. It's the best time to do it. And so everybody that's here in this panel, you're exactly where you need to be. This is the perfect time, better late than never, because there are many things going on that is going to prevent us from doing what we need to do. So whether you're an MSP student, whether you're an MSW, this is it. I really care a lot about the children that I work with every day. I care about the families in St. Louis. I want them to be happy, healthy, thriving. We have a predominant Black and Brown community here in St. Louis, especially at the schools that I work at. And to know that I can get into the root issue and cause of the barriers that prevent the kids that I see, I want to make sure that those are removed as much as possible. And so that's why I'm here at WashU. I want to make sure that I'm the reason why these babies can grow up and be confident in themselves, grow into successful adults, and contribute back into our city and make it great and wonderful and beautiful. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary. That was such a beautiful response. So we're going to switch just a little bit to more of the city of St. Louis. So we know there's people on the call and people who apply from all over. So we just want to hear a little bit of a perspective about that and what it's like to join not just the Brown School community, but also the St. Louis community. So this one is for Sophie and Caitlin, just to talk a little bit to that. Like, how did St. Louis become home to you? What was that process like? And where and how did you build that community? Sophie, if you want to start.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm originally from Kentucky. I grew up in a town of 1,800 people, so it really was itty bitty. Kind of branched out when I moved to Minnesota. It was more of a suburb, but really this is my first time living in a city, alone in a city. So I was definitely anticipating that, having some growing pains, being new. But I mean, just I've loved it so far. Being near things is really important. Through the Brown School, especially though, in every single class I take, you are getting to know the city. I just think that's amazing. I think social work is political. It is about the community you're in. And we are here in St. Louis, which is such a historically rich place. And so it makes sense that in every single class, even as a person who is looking to do micro, of course, it is so important to learn about the city. And so I love that, like, even where I live, I'm getting to experience it in a very multidimensional new way. So that, I don't know, that is sort of like the academic interest in, I guess, living here. But even like outside of that, sort of the superficial things, like I love living near the park and the zoo. And I really enjoyed, I joined a choir in the city, and I've gotten to meet people that way. So like having my community outside of the Brown School has also been a good way to sort of situate myself. I'm away from my family, I'm away from my friends. So I have felt really supported and starting to make that social network where I don't feel so alone. Hard to feel alone in such a vibrant place.
I echo a lot of Sophie's sentiments. I think I coming from like the Boston area. I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it felt like a real bubble. While I was living there, more than a majority of Canterbridgians had a master's degree or higher. And it was like, ooh, this is not, if I really want to kind of study the like political environment of the United States, if I want to understand people's distrust in government and institutions, this is not the place to do it. And it really felt like St. Louis is a microcosm of the United States in a way in which like the things I care most about are in really sharp relief, right? Distrust of government, structural violence, gun violence, vaccine hesitancy, ballot initiatives, the fight over reproductive rights, things like that. And I will say St. Louis is not always a super easy place to live. I live in the city, and there is a lot of structural violence here. At the same time, though, I think that I have found an incredibly tight-knit, very supportive community. And there are a lot of St. Louisans who really kind of understand these problems and are willing to work shoulder to shoulder to try and make their communities better. And so my first year here was, kind of really trying to get off campus, meet people, and listen to who was doing the work, listen to how people were talking about things so that I could understand the environment a little bit better. And I have found that to be really rewarding. This is a very affordable, extremely friendly city where it felt like people were curious to get to know me and really wanted to understand what I was about and partner with me in a meaningful way.
Thank you. And yeah, I agree. I'm not from St. Louis originally, but I've lived here for about 8 years now. And I agree with all of that. The communities like really care about St. Louis, and there's a lot of people working to make St. Louis a great place to live, which is why I personally like living here as well. So we'll pivot just a little bit because I know grad school is a really big decision to make. So for the students that are on the call, did you have any hesitations about attending? And how did you kind of overcome those and think that through as you were making the decision to pursue a master's degree at the Brown School? So actually, we'll start with Carrie.
Yeah, so really, so I got my my bachelor's in 2020. And so that was obviously a long time ago. Wow. And so I went back into the working field, and just, I think it was just a really weird transition, obviously getting out of the pandemic or the lockdown back into the work environment. And so I think things were just super weird. I wasn't, I've always wanted to go back to grad school or go back to school for the longest time. I knew that that was not the end for me as far as my education. And so really my hesitation was, I think there was just a divine timing situation. I think with, the work schedule, I think with just adult just adult life demands, just to put it very plainly. I wanted to make sure that I was independent enough to know that if I wanted to go back to school full time, that my schedule would accommodate being full time. I'm very lucky and grateful to have a job that recognizes that higher education is very important, and has accommodated that for me in my schedule. And so that was something that I'm very grateful for, because I know that that doesn't happen for everybody. And then the other, hesitancy was, is this something that that I'm really ready for? Can I handle this workload? And am I able to balance other things? Because grad school doesn't stop for life. Like, you just got to keep doing life things. And so all the adversities that happen, am I able to handle this emotionally? And it was more so just a divine timing thing. So.
So do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah. Ultimately my decision did become, do I want to stay in Minnesota where I have that community? Or do I want to take a risk on maybe having a more academically rigorous experience? And that was hard. That was not an easy thing. It was definitely like when they make you do the priorities list of like family or friends or love, it's like, wow, I really do have to pick, like, is it more important for me to feel like I have a strong community right now, or is it more important to me to feel like I am making a choice that might help my career and might be more engaging for the next 2 years? And really getting to visit for Admitted Students Weekend, I do suggest coming if you can make it, but it was physically being here in the space, seeing the kind of students who were here, that made me feel like that was a decision, that was a risk worth taking, that it was going to be worth it to have the experience that the Brown School entails. Also, I think just where the world was at that point in time at the beginning or middle of last year, deciding whether or not now was the time to get my MSW, to pay to get an education. Part of it was like, there is a lot of safety in being a part of WashU as the larger institution. So having 2 more years after undergrad where I knew I would have some form of protection in that way was another thing that really pushed me to come here. Protection to study what I wanted to study without feeling like we had to sacrifice other things.
Yeah, and for me, like everyone, I also had hesitations about attending graduate school. One of the biggest ones that I would always think about, am I ready for graduate school, especially in an advanced standing program, but also let alone the rigorous program that the Brown School has, and where everything just moves fast. And I would always keep asking myself, do I belong in a place like this, and am I able to keep up? So it was really kind of like a mix of imposter syndrome and just not knowing what to expect. But what really helps is connecting with classmates, but also talking to alumni as well. And everyone that I would speak with would say the same thing, that the Brown School does prepare you to be successful in the field and leaders in social work, social policy. And you don't have to show up knowing everything, right? That's why we're here in graduate school, to keep on learning. And hearing that from people who previously did the work was um, it's pretty reassuring. And then once I got here, being here in the classrooms, those worries fade pretty quickly. with the supportive community that you have, making sure that obtaining an MSW is the right thing to do. And also, aside from that, professors here are like learning your name. Classmates, again, are more than happy to help each other out. And there's so many resources here that make you feel like you're not doing this alone. So the hesitancy, again, does fade. But yeah, like I said, the hesitancy was normal just because you always think, am I ready for this? Am I ready for this? But as soon as you step in, it'll just fade quickly.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And yeah, I graduated in 2016, but can confirm like it felt that way even when I was here as a student in advanced standing, not knowing quite what I wanted to do. And then like fell in love with older adults and working with them. So thanks to the faculty here. So I definitely think for folks here on the call, one piece to always remember is that you get to have kind of this discovery phase too, where you can really find yourself and find your calling and your passions too. So using this as an opportunity to keep exploring that with faculty here who can be a mentor to you along the way is really great. And so with this next part, we're just going to kind of pivot about that Brown School experience. And so, Sarah, I would love to just know more about you and that boomerang effect that you talked about. So, like, kind of what first brought you here for the MSW, and then what brought you back for the PhD? And I guess, like, for folks who are interested in that continuing education at the Brown School from MSW to PhD, could you just talk more about how you're able to kind of make this experience your own?
Sure. I love piggybacking off of what you were just saying too, of, when you entered and having the space to figure out who you are and what you're doing, and why you were doing it. I think that's definitely been a theme all throughout my time at the Brown School. Is this is a great place to figure out, like, that you don't have it all set out for yourself already. Like, this is a place to test ideas and to figure out in a controlled, nice, kind environment whether things will work out for you. So actually, that's what I was doing. Post-graduation at U of I, I'd worked at a mental health hospital with kids who were no longer able to be housed in foster care in an actually home. So they were part of an institution. And so what I learned in that space was, wow, there are lots of skills of working with kids who have this much trauma that I don't have. And I know that there's a science to it, and I don't know the science. And so that's why I applied to get my master's. Is this idea of like, well, I can just, be a therapeutic listener is true up to a point, but then to deal with and help people move from one place to another, it requires a lot more learning and skill. And there's, at the time it was called evidence-based practice, was a big key component of what the Brown School was teaching. So that's why I chose the Brown School. When I got here, I thought I was going to do direct practice, and then very quickly learned in my foundations class that I am not comfortable in direct practice. I am not quick on my feet to think through, like, what should I be saying next? When we would do these dyads, I don't know if they still do that. Students, you can tell me yes or no. But when I was going through that process, it wasn't like, oh, well, now I should just quit because I came here for one thing and now I got to leave. There were so many different avenues for me to explore outside of just direct practice that I think is very unique about the Brown School, because we have so much faculty doing lots of different things. And I think that the biggest kind of hallmark for me was the experience of not just doing like a class dyad, but our practicums are with very well-established agencies in the community that have long tenured relationships with the Brown School. And one of the first things I got to sit in on was an interview with a child who had been sexually abused, and listening to another MSW who is well established in the field interview that child in front of an investigator to understand their experience. So like those skills that they gained from here, you get to see other people do in real life. And I think that is such a critical key component, because once you graduate in 2 years, you're kind of out there. Kind of do your thing. So I think the Brown School really preps you well. I guess that's why I keep boomeranging back. I spent some time right after graduating. Actually, that's how I met Shayna, who's on this call, through, NEST, which was this organization that one of my friends who was MSW at the same time started while she was at the MSW program. She just started an organization that now works with Target, well, not as much anymore, Hermes, like different organizations trying to build pathways for women in developing countries to hone a craft or learn a craft, and also economically thrive. That was something that was outside of the scope of what my brain could comprehend. It was part of the MSW program here, but that's where she learned these skills through her SED concentration. I think that's social economic development concentration, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, there's so many connections you'll get from WashU. I think when you leave the Brown School, if you stay in St. Louis, people just automatically recognize it because it has such a big weight in the community in terms of how well they prepare people. And people do all sorts of things. You know, I graduated and didn't do direct practice like I thought I would. I did research. And that's kind of how I ran back to do social systems design. And I work with youth in developing organizations. That was a lot, but there's a lot in there.
No, I appreciate that. And I was actually going to ask Sarah, was it because of the research you were doing, was that able to kind of help you pivot to the PhD program after the MSW, or how did you kind of do that with Gateway?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, that's a good long story too, but I'll keep it short. Yes, I did some research while I was here. There's always great opportunities. Like I know Caitlin takes students and she will train you on how to write a research paper. One of my professors was working on something that was just tangentially interesting to me. It was about Korean American churches and their role in community development. And I helped her with a little paper. We got a poster in a research conference, and I didn't apply for my PhD until 6 years later. But that poster that I did with her back then was enough for my CV to feel like I had some stuff on there to kind of come back into research and do it. So yeah, I think research here and in practice, because that pathway is so short and you are truly working with like the most prominent people in their fields. Like I'm thinking about Brett Drake and Melissa Johnson-Reed in child welfare. They are the biggest names in child welfare, predominantly in social work. They have an office right down there, but they teach your classes and they also have research positions for you to do. Right next door to me is Mark Rain. He just won an award for writing a book on, economic development for families. And it was a nationally awarded thing, but he also, works with people who are in the school. So all that to say, even in my lab, we're always looking for people who will work on our research projects. Like right now, we're working on burnout and how to support the people who are going through it so that they can deliver better services for students.
Thank you for doing that incredible work, because burnout is a real thing. And I'm glad that we're talking more about it. And I will give kudos to the Brown School on that, just because I've even seen it as a field instructor, more of my students talking about it in their classes and having like better boundaries, and also like willing to have that conversation and dialogue with community members and stakeholders, which I think is really great. I just want to note that I know that we were set to finish at 12:45 due to the technical issues. We're hoping to just go a little bit longer, but if any of our panelists do have to leave at that 12:45 mark, please feel free to. I just don't want to hold you hostage on camera. You're free to leave if you have to. But I actually want to pivot to Caitlin. And I think, Sarah, you kind of talked about this in your own experience, but Caitlin, I would love to know more just about how, as someone who came in as junior faculty, how the Brown School has helped shape your career goals and direction, and as you're on the tenure track, what that looks for you.
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of ways in which I think the Brown School in St. Louis has really shaped my career trajectory in ways that I didn't expect. So I knew coming in that like Missouri and St. Louis were going to be a great place to study the things that I wanted to study. What I wasn't expecting was how committed this university is to real interdisciplinary research. I think a lot of other schools and universities talk a lot about it, but I really found kind of collaborators at the med school and, across disciplines. I'm collaborating with someone in political science and in sociology. And I could just kind of cold email faculty around the university and they'd be like, yeah, I think that's a cool question. How can we answer it together? So it's been a lot more interdisciplinary than I expected. It's also been a lot more community engaged. So for example, both in my research and in my teaching. So this semester, I'm teaching a class on bullet-related injury and policy in St. Louis in the United States, and I'm teaching that with a local trauma surgeon. And I met him because he leads Stop the Bleed trainings on how to apply tourniquets in the community, and I went to one of those. And then we were at another faculty member's house for a dinner party. with someone who wrote a book about gun violence in America. And we sat next to each other at dinner and we got to talking and we were like, why don't we teach a class together? And then one of our guest speakers yesterday was like, hey, can we pivot this into a med school class where also our med students are like rotating through the hospital? And I was like, yes, would you be open to an MSW practicum site as well? And so it's just been this incredible environment of like being able to hit people up at the university, but also in the community who are doing really good work and figuring out how we can work together, both in teaching and research and practice to try and like create, just like a groundswell of effort around these areas. And that is a type of collegiality and real willingness to partner that I haven't seen in other places. And I think it has really transformed my career and my research for the better.
Amazing. And I kind of want to pivot on that back to you, Caitlin and Sarah's, but I think especially kind of what the students answered earlier about why now, why an MSW, why an MSP, given the climate that we're in. I think, what advice would you give to prospective students who are considering going back for these degrees, but may have some concerns, or just why is it important to me, even what Carrie, you said at the beginning, like now is the perfect time, but better late than never. Just for you from the faculty perspective, why is now the right time for an MSW or an MSP degree?
You want me to go first, Caitlin? Yeah, it's a good question, because I will tell you, if I was sitting in front of you and could see all of your beautiful faces, I would say, well, is it the right time for you? First, you have to kind of figure out, like, personally, is this the right time to do a master's level education? If it is, great, awesome. Because right now for MSW, MSP, I mean, for obvious reasons, in what's happening in the political culture and climate and actual on the ground events happening to people all around us, having the skills to help people get through really tough things is something that you will learn here. And if that is something that you are really interested in honing in your craft, like you will get those skills here. If on the other hand, like for me, I thought that was the first thing that I would be doing. There's other ways to help without having to do direct practice. Like you can do research. There's multiple pathways. So I don't know that, it's for everyone. I will say that too. It's like MSW is not for everyone. You should do that work and figure out whether it's an MSW, an MSP, or something else. But if you feel convicted that like this is the pathway for you, I mean, we need great people who are trained well out in the world to do this work. There's no shortage of it.
I worked for 4 years after graduating from college. I moved to Topeka, Kansas. I was doing public health and health policy research. I was working with the state legislature. I wound up moving to Kansas City, Kansas, and working for the unified government of Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, running the Mayor's Health Coalition. And I really hit a point, especially with that health coalition. We were trying to figure out how to make Wyandotte County not the last ranked county in Kansas for health. And so we were trying to address food deserts and getting groceries to move into the urban core. And we were trying to improve the built environment, make sure there were safe places to walk and exercise and all sorts of these things. And I realized that part of what I needed was I personally, in order to convince the lawmakers around me, I needed to be able to show them really good evidence that it's worth this investment. If we do this, we can expect these kinds of outcomes. And I did not have the research acumen to be able to do that. And so I felt like I had worked in these jobs, as Sarah said, until I kind of hit an endpoint where I couldn't learn on the job anymore. And I really needed to learn in a classroom how to do these things well. And I needed dedicated school time to learn those skills. I had also been trying to take stats classes at night after work, but I could only kind of take one at a time. And I was like, maybe it's worth taking a couple of years to really learn these skills and kind of leapfrog into a different kind of job where I can be doing more of that research. I didn't want to become a professor. I really wanted to become a legislative policy analyst for a politician trying to make really good policy. And so I came back to school and I was like, I need to learn statistics. And what I will do is do statistics nonstop for 2 years as much as possible. And even before I did my PhD, I did another year of polling. I did health and social policy polling for a bunch of news organizations like Politico and NPR to try and learn kind of those techniques before I ultimately went back to do my PhD. And so I think for me, it was like, what can I learn on the job versus what do I need to learn in a classroom? And also, like, I had some really like difficult calculations to make about like what is the amount of debt that I can incur that makes sense for my future career. And I chose a school that also gave me a partial scholarship so that I wasn't taking on more debt than I could afford, but I was really confident that the training that I would get, that where I would get that training would be good and it would have a payoff for my future salary such that I could pay back that debt.
I think that is so valid. And that's something that I think we try really hard to talk with students who do make appointments with us. If you still want to talk with us and kind of ask these tough questions, that's what we're here for. We do not want you to feel that you have to go into a massive amount of debt to get these degrees. We really want to make sure that this is the right time for you to go back to school, as Sarah said. This is the right environment for you, which I think it is. We all love it here, but also, what is it that you want? We're here to support you as a person. Someone said in the comments, not being a number. You're not a number to us. You are someone who has dreams and aspirations, and just what's the best way we can support you through that work, and hopefully probably call you a colleague down the road. There are some really great questions too in the Q&A. What I would recommend, especially around things like relocating, student jobs, and things like that, please reach out to us. I'll have a slide at the end where you can contact us. Actually, maybe I'll go ahead and share it now just so that we stay good on time. But please feel free to reach out to us and we can have either myself or Madison answer those questions with you or have one of our student ambassadors talk with you. And before we get to the very last question I have for our panelists, I do just want to show some reminders. Our March 1st priority review deadline is coming up, as well as our final deadline for international students. So if you are looking of getting your applications in, that would be the perfect time to do so. May 1st, my birthday. I hope you all will intend to enroll. And then June 1st is the final deadline for our domestic applicants. We also will have some upcoming virtual info sessions we hope you'll come to. The next one being why we chose social work. It is social work month next month, and we are really excited to talk about that, as well as why we chose social policy, because it is such a great program for folks who are really looking at that policy ecosystem and how they can fit in there. And then here is also just our information to answer or send questions our way. But to our panelists, which thank you so much for your time. My last final question to you all is that if you could give one piece of advice to prospective students that we haven't touched on yet about what it means to choose the right grad school for them, just what would it be? And we can just popcorn around starting with Jonathan.
Yeah, so I guess if I could give one piece of advice, I would say choose the school where you feel like you can truly grow and belong as well, and get the most out of your time there. Graduate school is a big step. I know literally last year I was getting ready to walk the stage for undergrad, but now we're here in graduate school. And you want to be somewhere that obviously feels supportive and kind of aligned with who you are, but also what you want to do, and what your goals, intentions, and values are, getting into the field of social work or social policy as well. And also just kind of pay attention when you talk to current students or sit in on information sessions as well. And like notice, can you picture yourself learning there? What can you get out of it? And also what draws you to it at the end of the day too. And just having people around you that will support you, especially when graduate school does get a little bit difficult, a little bit tough. That matters more than anything else. And just again, make sure that it's the right setting for you as well.
Yeah, definitely agree with Jonathan. I think just being in St. Louis for almost 10 years now, it's definitely a matter of like who is around you, who is going to be your support, people that love on you when you're going through it. And you got 3 papers due on the same day. And they're all like a minimum of like 8 pages or more. But then other than that, I mean, like think about, the city. think about how much you want to dig yourself into St. Louis, or any school, whatever city that your school is in. How immersed do you want to be in this city? Because when I think about coming to WashU, I knew that I was already immersed in St. Louis, and I said, this is exactly how I'm gonna be deeper into my city. This is how I'm gonna connect more, by doing the research that I need to do and learning more through what WashU has to offer. And so make sure you ask yourself that too.
I can go. If I could give myself advice, I feel like reframing it so that you can remember grad schools want you as much as you want to go to grad school. It's not just about proving yourself or like having to say, this is all my experience, so I am good enough. It's like you get to share yourself. And I think the more you can lean into like, this is authentic passion for you, the better off you're going to be finding a place that fits you. I feel like when I talk to students right now, especially those who are like working on their personal statements or maybe like gearing up to do that video interview, it's a lot of like, what's relevant experience and like, what's the right thing to share? And it's like kind of corny and like vague advice, but like the best thing to share is the thing that you're the most passionate about. And like the beauty of the MSW, and I'm sure also the MSP, is that like there are so many intersections for where your interests and passions can connect. Sometimes it's the thing you're more passionate about as opposed to the thing that feels more relevant, I guess. So lean into your emotions because this is an emotional field.
I'll go next. So I would look at this entire process as an investment in yourself. So think about what are the classes offered, go through the list, see what classes are offered, look at the professors and the practicum opportunities, and think like, can you see yourself in those places? Do you want to grow in those places? So yeah, just think like, if I'm investing in me, is this something that's going to help me grow?
I think for master students, as Sarah said, I really look at the curriculum and do the required classes, for example, feel well aligned with your learning objectives. Also something I really considered is like, where did I feel like I could learn both inside and outside of the classroom? And I don't know if we have any PhD students on the line, but I think for that, I would really focus on finding a mentor who really wants the best for you, no matter what career you want to pursue, and really wants to help you grow. Academia tends to reproduce itself a lot. And so, is your mentor still going to be invested in you, even if you don't necessarily want to be an academic yourself?
Thank you so much. Again, to our panelists, our faculty, and our students. And if you enjoyed this panel, not only come to an info session, but consider coming to Admitted Students Weekend. That is April 10th and 11th. It's a Friday and Saturday, and you'll be able to meet people like Caitlin and Sarah in person, as well as our wonderful students, getting to hear from the second years and what their experience has been like. See some sample lectures, just get to know the community a little bit more and see if it's the right space for you, and enjoy some St. Louis gooey butter cake at the very least. But we really want to thank all of you for coming. Thank you so much for being here today, panelists, and also prospective students who are on the line. And we hope to welcome you to the Brown School this fall. So everyone take care. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at brownadmissions@boostville.edu. But thank you all so much.